Hey, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the mid-year freakout book tag. This is a book tag that I've done on my channel for a number of years now. Like, I've probably been doing this tag for 10 years, which is crazy to say. But this is one of my favorite videos to make every single year because I love doing a mid-year check-in where I get to talk about some of my favorites of the year, some of my most disappointing books of the year, which books I'm still highly anticipating, and all kinds of things like that. I will have all the previous years that I've done this linked down below, as well as all of the questions linked down below. I did end up tweaking some of the questions, but I'm very excited to talk about all of the books with you because I feel like so far 2026 has been a pretty great reading year for me overall, and I've had so many new favorites. But before we do jump into today's video, I just wanted to take a second to thank today's video sponsor, which is a new sponsor on my channel, and that is CookUnity. CookUnity is a chef-to-you meal delivery platform that connects you with hundreds of fresh, fully prepped meals from award-winning chefs. With CookUnity, you can choose from over 400 meals nationwide each week, including over 45 global cuisines and diets. All of their meals are handcrafted in small batches in local kitchens near you. There are over 130 chefs on the platform, which includes Food Network stars and award-winning chefs. And these meals are delivered to you fully cooked, so all you have to do is heat them up for about 2 minutes and you have a warm and nutritious meal ready to go. And since ordering my first box with CookUnity, I was so impressed that I immediately ordered a second box because the quality of the food was so good. Like, even some things that I thought weren't gonna heat up as well, I was so surprised by how well they heated up. For example, one of the meals that I got was this Korean beef quesadilla, and this quesadilla was prepared by Chef Esther Choi. It was so good, and the tortilla was so soft and the beef was so flavorful. I also ended up trying this one that was like a lemon rosemary chicken, and this one had these Parmesan mashed potatoes and grilled asparagus, and these were probably some of the best mashed potatoes. Like, I am not even kidding. The flavor of the cheese and the butter, it really came through. And then one of the meals that actually ended up being one of my top favorites is the grilled lime chicken with the corn salad and the barley on the side. Oh my gosh, this is a meal that I have ordered again for my second box because of how much I loved it. The portion sizes are big enough that I'm not hungry again like 3 hours later. And I will definitely be ordering more from CookUnity in the future because I cannot believe the quality of the food. The portion sizes are amazing. The taste is so good. Everything that I've tried from them so far I've really loved, so I can't wait to explore more of their menu in the future. The exciting news is that CookUnity is offering my viewers 50% off their first order. You can click the link down in my description and use my code gabbyreads50 to try it out. So definitely be sure to click that link down below to get 50% off your first order of chef-made meals delivered fresh to your door. Thank you so much to CookUnity for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get into the books. Alright, so the very first question of this book tag is actually one that's like one of the hardest in my opinion, because the first question is, what is your favorite book of 2026 so far? I am planning to make a video very soon that's going to be like all of my favorite books of the year so far, but to be honest, it is kind of hard for me to narrow down like my top #1 favorite. But I think right now, if I had to pick one at this moment in time, it would probably be Starshipped by Cat Sebastian. I read this book back in March and I have just been absolutely obsessed with it ever since. This one is a male-male romance about these two actors who are starring on this sci-fi show together. And you know what's so crazy is after reading this book and loving it as much as I did, I have since read 4 books by Cat Sebastian this year. This is a new to me author that I've read so many books from now because of how much I love this one, but honestly, like, this one is still my #1 favorite from this author. But then some other books that come to mind as like some top contenders for my best book that I've read this year, maybe like Molka by Monica Kim or My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. This one is a horror book, this one is a thriller book. So I feel like these ones have to be my top favorites for their respective genres because I'm such a big reader of all of these genres and it's really hard for me to figure out like which one is my top favorite. The second question says, what is the best sequel you've read so far in 2026? As you might know, I'm not a really big series reader, so in some years past I haven't really had an answer for this one, but I actually think my favorite sequel that I've read this year is once again another Cat Sebastian book, and it's called You Should Be So Lucky. This is one that I actually just read last month because technically You Should Be So Lucky is the sequel to We Could Be So Good, which is another book that I've read from Cat Sebastian this year. And these ones actually kind of surprised me because I didn't think I would enjoy them as much as I did because they are historical romances. This one's kind of taking place in like the late 1950s, and then this one's taking place in like the early 1960s, and both of them are queer romances and they follow these two men. I just love the way that Cat Sebastian writes her romances, like, what can I say? But then another book that was technically a sequel that I also really enjoyed is this one called And Now Back to You by B.K. Borison. This one is technically the second book in a series that follows like the same characters in this like little romance world. I loved these two characters, Jackson and Delilah. They just had really cute chemistry, and they're both competing meteorologists, which I thought was really fun. Like, I love reading about jobs like that. All right, the third question question says, what is a new release that you haven't read yet but you still want to? And I have so many books that are new releases that I desperately want to read. One of the ones that comes to mind right away is Rules for the Summer by Megan Quinn, especially because this looks like it's going to be the perfect summer read, so like I'm dying to read this one soon, but especially because of after how much I loved Till Summer Do Us Part by this author, I was like, okay, I immediately need to read her new release. And then some other books that I've also had my eye on recently, one of them is Long Island Girls by Gabrielle Korn. This is one that I just recently ordered from Aardvark, and I'm just so curious about it because this one is like sapphic, and I've heard that it's like either late 90s or early 2000s, and like there's music. It just really sounds like it could be my thing, so I'm hoping to read this one soon. And then speaking of sapphic romance stories that I've been hearing about, there's this other one called Almost Life, and this is another one that I've been hearing some really great praise for. I've actually seen a lot of people saying that this is like the sapphic version of The Heart's Invisible Furies, which was like one of my favorite queer romances that I've ever read. And so when somebody said that, I was like, okay, instantly adding to my TBR. So I'm really hoping to read this one too before the end of the year. And then question number 4 is, what is your most anticipated book coming out in the second half of this year? And man, I have a freaking list of answers for this because there are so many exciting books coming out in the second half of this year. I'm actually planning to do a video, hopefully like in the month of August, I think next month, where I talk about all of my most anticipated books that are still coming out in the second half of the year. But some that come to mind right away, I mean, the new Riley Sager is going to be coming out in August called The Unknown, and this is one that we're going to be reading together for the book troop, and I'm just really excited. Like anytime Riley Sager has a new book, I just get very excited. So that's definitely one. But then also Pictures of You by Josh Malerman is coming out this September, I believe, and Josh Malerman has become one of my favorite horror authors, so I'm really looking forward to this one, as well as Newborn Park by Jennifer Marie Thorne, because this is the same author as Diavolo, which was a really fun horror book in my opinion. Like I just had so much fun reading that one, and I've actually been debating if we should read this one in the fall together for the book troop, so let me know your thoughts on that, if this is one that you think I should pick for the fall pick, because I'm so excited to read this book. And I've heard this book being described as like Saltburn vibes, but with werewolves. I need to know what that means. All right, question number 5 is, what is your biggest disappointment of the year so far? And for me, I mean, that has to be, without a doubt, The Night We Met by Abby Jimenez, because what the heck was that book? What even was that? I don't even know. I read this book in one of my reading vlogs that I can link down below because I really like roasted this book. And I was so severely let down by this, like you have no idea. I gave this book 1 star. The writing in this was not good in my opinion. Like it was actually so bland and so boring. And like I just expect so much more from Abby Jimenez because I've loved so many books by this author. So I don't know what happened here, but like this was without a doubt the biggest disappointment of the entire year for me. Another book that I recently thought was pretty disappointing was actually Kiss Slay Replay by Rachel Harrison. This is an ARC copy that I have, and I was just trying to read this, you know, like during Summerween, and I ended up DNFing it at like 140 pages in because I really don't like the writing in this. I feel like for some authors that I have like loved in the past, it seems like the quality of the writing has gone down over time, and I don't know what's going on. But I think this book was especially disappointing for me because the premise is so fun. Because the idea of this like horrifying slasher thing happening while she's at her best friend's wedding, and then to have a time loop thing on top of that, I just thought it would be so fun and so unique, but like I really couldn't get into this one. Like the writing was just not good. All right, question number 6 is, what was the biggest surprise with the book this year? Truly one of the best feelings in the world when you go into a book kind of like not really knowing what you're gonna get out of it, and then feeling like, holy shit, I love this so much, and it really takes you off guard. And I definitely had that experience this year when I read Kiss Me Maybe by Gabriela Gamez, and it was mostly because I went into this romance just thinking it was gonna be like a sapphic, cute romance, and I ended up feeling so seen by this main character because she's actually asexual, which I didn't know going into this book. And there were so many things with this main character that like I really related to her and I felt so seen by her, and I was just not expecting that at all with this book. But then also when I read These Violent Delights, oh my gosh, this one was another surprise because the quality of the writing in this book is so good. The writing is just so atmospheric, and it's like dark academia and like moody queer men and like toxic relationships, and like the way that the dynamic between these two was written, like I was obsessed. The writing was so freaking good. And then speaking of really good writing, I would also say Pizza Girl is another one that really surprised me, especially because the ratings on Goodreads for this book are actually pretty low, and I don't understand why, because I thought the writing in this book was so gorgeously done, and I loved getting into the head of this character. And even though this book was really short, it's one that I would definitely recommend checking out because it is such a quick listen, but it was very thought-provoking and it made me feel a lot of things, and I just thought the writing was like really well done. All right, question number 7 is your new favorite author. And you know, like I mentioned before, I don't think it's a shock to anybody that I would say Cat Sebastian is without a doubt my new favorite author that I've read this year, because since reading Starshipped, I have read 4 books by this author this year. And like that is so rare for me to just go on a binge with like an author's entire backlist like that. But I still think, you know, Starship is definitely like my #1 favorite, but then We Could Be So Good is my #2 favorite. I love this one so much. And I've had 2 5 stars from this author, and then I gave one 4.5 stars and then a 4 star. So like I've been loving her stuff. And that feels so good, you have no idea. And especially because Kat Sebastian, she does have a pretty extensive backlist of books. So like I have a lot of others to read as well, which is very exciting. Question number 8 is, who is your newest fictional crush? Which has always been a funny question for me because I feel like when I get a fictional crush, it's more likely to happen in TV shows and movies than it is with books. Because I'm like Sam Winchester from Supernatural, like hello, like that's my current fictional crush right now. But if I were to choose a character from a book, it would have to be the guy Wilder from Till Summer Do Us Part, because this is without a doubt like one of my favorite romance books that I've read this year, and I adored this character Wilder so much. But I do think the reason that this character Wilder kind of like stood out to me amongst other male love interests is because he's so emotionally mature, and I feel like that's really rare to come across in romance novels. And I just loved how like endlessly patient he was with her. And so his character and this book in general was definitely a standout for me. Oh my gosh, I was also just thinking of the character Wes from Voicemails for Isabel that's played by Nick Robinson. Like that is also my fictional crush right now. Oh my gosh, this man. Nick Robinson is a cutie pie and it's ruining my life. All right, question number 9 is, who is your newest favorite character? Honestly, that has to be Junie from Female Fantasy, because I felt so connected to her character because she is just such a passionate fangirl and she just loves romance so much. And like there were so many things about her character that I just felt so connected to her while I was reading this. This is another one of my top favorite romances of the year, by the way. Like, oh my god, they were so cute. But like Junie especially, I just really vibed with her character. And then other characters that I really loved were actually John and Sylvia from Shot in the Dark, which is probably a surprise to nobody because, you know, I ended up reading this one earlier this year because it was described as being a book that's like perfect for fans of Supernatural, because the guy in this book, he's a hunter who is a lot like Sam Winchester. And then this girl Sylvia, she's actually described as being this like fairy. She's kind of like tiny size, like Tinkerbell. But like tell me why this romance was so cute, and I loved both of these characters so much. Like they were just so precious. And then actually another one of my favorite characters that I read from this year was actually the character Abigail from Woodworking. This character was like the young trans student that was like living in a small town, and there was something about Abigail's voice in this book. Oh my gosh, this character was making me laugh so hard, and I just really enjoyed reading about Abigail's character in this one. All right, question number 10 is, what is a book that has made you cry? One that came to mind right away is actually The Place Where They Buried Your Heart by Christina Henry, and I'm pretty sure I was crying within the first like 50 pages of this book, which was actually crazy. There was something about the way that this book was written, it just pulled on my heartstrings. It was just so beautiful and so hard to imagine as an older sibling. And then also another one that I can think of is Japanese Gothic. I was not expecting to cry during this book, and this is another one that like, whoa, completely took me off guard. And by the ending, I nearly like burst into tears, and I was like sitting in a coffee shop while I was reading this one. And Japanese Gothic is another book that's like one of my top favorites of this year as well. Question number 11 is, what is a book that made you happy? And this is another one that like I could list so many books for this answer because reading in general does make me pretty happy. But specifically this year, I've been really loving a lot of the like weird girl books, and those have been making me really happy. And I'm talking about books like A Good Person or like Boring Asian Female. There's something about reading from this kind of narrator that is just so endlessly entertaining to me. These books kind of gave me the same feeling that I had while I was reading Big Swiss, and I feel like I've been chasing that feeling ever since reading Big Swiss. I wanted to take a minute to shout out The Mashup, which is a book that I read as an ARC earlier this year, and it actually just published in the month of July. And this is without a doubt like one of my favorite books that I've read this year, and it made me so happy because I think if you're somebody who's like missing that like nostalgic kind of like early 2000s time period, then I think you need to read this book. And also because the protagonist reminded me so much of like Lorelai Gilmore. And if you used to play the game MASH when you were like in middle school or back in high school, I think you would absolutely love this. Like this was one of the most nostalgic books that I've read in a long time. And it also has one of the cutest romances that I've read in a long time. So like The Mashup is definitely one that made me so happy. And then sorry, I know I have a lot of books for this answer, but I also wanted to mention How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates made me so freaking happy. I want to read more books like this where it's like half slasher and half rom-com, because this just had the perfect balance of everything that I'm looking for when I'm reading. The romance in this was actually so good. And then it was also like a really fun slasher. Like there were some really intense like horror moments, and I just loved the way that this character was so obsessed with like romance movies and horror movies. I was like, I feel so seen. So I loved this book and it genuinely brought me so much joy to be reading this one. All right, the next question is, what is your favorite book to film adaptation that you've seen this year? You know, I was actually going through a lot of my books and I was like, I actually have not seen that many book to screen adaptations, but I guess if I had to pick one, I think my favorite would be Heated Rivalry, even though I didn't love the book as much as I loved the show. I think I gave the book like 3 stars and the show is like without a doubt like a 5 out of 5, like one of the best that I've ever seen. So I think I would go with that. And I thought one of my other answers would be, you know, I did read this little supernatural book called Nevermore, because this was published, you know, back when they used to like make books that were about the show. And this is one of those books that like takes place in between the episodes of season 2 of Supernatural. And like the book was whatever, like the book was like a 3 star, but like Supernatural is like one of my new favorite shows of all time. So like if that counts as an adaptation, then that would also be one of my favorites, I guess. Question number 13 is, what is the most beautiful book that you've bought this year? You know, I think without a doubt, this copy of Yesteryear is like the most gorgeous book on my shelves. I actually ordered this from the UK because I loved the UK cover so much more than the American cover, and this is another one of my favorite books that I've read this year. Yesteryear just like absolutely knocked my socks off. Like the writing in this book is so good. And this is another one of those stories where you're reading from a protagonist who is just like so awful. Like low-key, she's the worst. She's terrible. But like I cannot pull my eyes away from the page. Like I thought she was so entertaining as a character to follow. And I'm so glad that I got this copy from the UK because I much prefer this cover. And then earlier this year, I also ended up buying this really cool special edition of Fan Service because Fan Service is like one of my favorite romance novels that I've ever read. I actually reread this book earlier this year and that's what inspired me to find this one too. And like this has to be the most beautiful because look at the amount of detail. Dude, are you kidding me? Like look at it without the dust jacket on. Like, is this not the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life? And then we have cute artwork in the front and cute artwork in the back. I just absolutely love this book with all of my heart and I'm so glad that I decided to get the special edition of it because I think it's so beautiful. All right, and the final question, and this is one that I added on myself, is what is your favorite video that you've made so far this year? Because I've been really proud of some of the videos that I've been making this year and I thought now would be a good time to like shout some of them out if you missed them. I mean, one of the videos that I really loved doing was when I actually took my first ever solo trip and I ended up going and visiting Anacortes in Washington and it was a cute little coastal town. I mean, in that reading vlog, I did end up reading like one of my 1-star like worst books that I've read this year, but the trip ended up being so much fun anyways and I just really love how that vlog turned out. And then also I did another vlog where like my best friend Brittany controlled my TBR for the week and I read 5 books for that video and that's another one that I'm really proud of. How it turned out, it was so fun and I feel like I read some really unique stuff that week. And then also another video that I wanted to shout out is this one that I made that was for my Patreon. It was called a sleepover vlog. Dude, I had so much fun with this and I've actually been like thinking about different ways that I could do this again because the whole concept of it was that we were going to be like having a sleepover together and it was like I curled up in bed and I ordered pizza and I braided my hair and I talked about sleepovers from my childhood and I read a horror book in the dark and it was just so much fun, like peak vibes. And so I was thinking of other ways that I could do this. Like maybe I was thinking I could do this video again, but like I could be rereading some of my childhood favorite books in like the sleepover format and then kind of be talking about like my sleepovers that I used to have when I was a kid. I don't know, maybe you could help me flesh out that idea, but like I just think it would be so much fun and I love the idea of a sleepover vlog and like clearly I've just been in this state of nostalgia for almost all of 2026. Like that's all I want to do is talk about the past and like my childhood and like the good times. But anyway, that is a wrap on all of the questions from the mid-year freak out book tag. I love doing this video so much because I love getting to check in about all of my favorite things and like most disappointing things. And you'll have to let me know like what are some of your top favorite books that you've read so far this year? What were some of your biggest disappointments? And then what are some of your like most anticipated books that are still coming out in the second half of the year? Like I want to know. Tell me everything in the comments and thank you so much for watching as always and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye.